Hello, everyone. This is going to be lecture 5.1, and we're filming it for our uh, Human Growth and Development class. So let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna leave this like this so you can all see my notes also if you need to have that. Enlarge this a little since we're going to use it that way. So we're now in uh, middle childhood, and we're talking about the physical changes in 5.1. So usually children are growing about 2 to 3 inches a year, and the girls tend to go through their growth spurt 2 years earlier than boys. So they tend to be larger than boys when it comes to height. In weight size, most children gain about 5 to 7 pounds per year, but that is uh, an average. It can be a little less, it can be a little more because of variations on children and genetics and food sources, etc. Uh, when we talk about uh, children who are impacted by poor nutrition, uh, that also can play a role in size of the child. And most of the times here in the United States, since food sources are readily available to most people, either through uh, service aids or through being able to afford it yourself or through schools that provide lunches in many cities and school districts. Free lunches are provided for children even in the summertime, and we do here in Pittsburgh to make sure all our children are fed. So most of the variations in the United States are due to genetics. We do see some ethnic differences too, and that's also genetics. Some of the Asian and Ocean Pacific children are shorter than Northern and Central Eastern Europe, and you see rapid growth for Black children more than for white children. So it's important that we give a positive spin on good nutrition. Uh, it is important for children's development, not only physically, but also intellectually. The problem we see now, though, with social anxiety of children being put on um, display per se, that if they don't look a certain image, if they look anything outside the norm, then they need to change. So weight can be very much a concern, especially for girls at this age, between the ages of 9 and 10. So, the research shows that even at this age, about 40% of our girls are actually dieting at the age of 9 or 10. Obesity is an issue here in the United States, um, and it can be for a variety of different reasons, but we're talking about 15% of all U.S. children are obese. This has tripled since 1960. And because of obesity, we know there's a possibility of not living as long of a life, so your lifespan would be affected. Obesity can be a combination of genetics or social characteristics. Genetics, period, things that we have been passed on from our parents, nothing that children can do about that. Don't have to, you don't have the ability to choose who your parents were when it comes to genetics. Social factors, children who are eating constantly, not eating good nutrition, snacking all the time, can't really control themselves. Children who are given food as comfort. So we have a whole bunch of children who have been developed into what we call comfort eaters. So anytime they feel stressed or worried, they eat. Or here, have a cookie. Here, have some cake. Here, have some ice cream. Oh, here, let's buy this. Let's buy that. Oh, I want some candy, sugary drinks, etc. I'm sitting here drinking my zero sugar green tea. Probably not the first choice for like children who are, you know, eating lunch or breakfast or dinner. They would prefer to have something more like uh, soda uh, for dinner or a snack. So obesity can be a combination, again, of genetics and social characteristics, poor diet. Um, and it's sad to say school lunch programs are not always nutritious. And I got to give programs some credit here, just because, especially in the middle school, junior high, high school, sometimes for the lunch programs, students have a choice of what they want to eat. They just have to make sure they take one of each component. In like the junior high and the middle school. In high school, they can pretty much eat what they want, whatever they're willing to pay for on their card that they would use. And even though you may provide a salad bar, you may provide healthy options, they still may go for those two orders of fries with cheese or pizza with extra cheese and, like sausage and pepperoni and everything on it, and may turn down that nice little salad that's there or that mixed vegetables. Not always is that going to be the first choice when they may have other choices. So it's not always the school lunch program's fault. Uh, when students have the choice, it's not always the best picking, if you know what I mean. Also, parents packing lunches. Many try to give a nice healthy variety, and some people are just short on time, so they buy those little Lunchables. And not like they taste bad or anything, but if you actually read the label on those Lunchables and the fat content, it may not be your first choice, but sometimes it's the only choice because of you're working and taking care of your family, and you just don't have the time. Lack of exercise, children and screen time. Screen time is up for every age group. So not as much time outside, reduced gym time or recess for schools to put in more time on core subjects. Some children just don't exercise. High correlation between uh, lack of exercise, watching TV, and obesity. It's interesting because, I teach at the high school level also. And the newest craze is actually kind of exciting. Um, it's the hacky sack craze has come back. A hacky sack is a little ball that your job is to try to keep it from falling down. So you kick it with your legs, etc., like that. You're not using your hands. And I noticed our boys outside doing hacky sack, and I'm there going, oh my gosh, they're actually doing something where they're not on their phone and not on the screen. I did hacky sacks when I was a kid. So it's not like this new thing. It's just has kind of been revived, and it's kind of giving hope that, hey, maybe kids will go back outside and actually do some physical activity that they enjoy, and all because of this little ball called a hacky sack. So there's hope maybe for the summer of getting our young people off of screens for a while. So, trying to keep children fit, making exercise fun, hence I mentioned the hacky sack. Be a role model. So, just don't tell your kids, you need to exercise more. Do it as a family. Grab a couple bikes and go down to the trails and ride together on the trails. Make it a weekly event, like every Sunday, afternoon that you're going to go for an hour or even just a nice walk, or if you do have a pet, taking your pet for a walk, or maybe you have an elderly neighbor that has a pet, and maybe you could volunteer to take their dog for a walk. Just get your child and you out of the house. Greater chance that they're going to do things if they're doing it with somebody. Find a partner to play with and do things outside. I'm from the generation that we were told not to come home till the streetlights came on. So we would have all these games that we would play outside. And I know there are some neighborhoods that it can be frightening to have your child outside because, you hear of children who have been kidnapped or violence in certain neighborhoods. That can happen anywhere. But getting our children back outside, doing things, physical things, give them a job around the house. Maybe they have to help weed the little garden that they planted. And never use physical activity as a punishment because you're setting them up for failure later in life. If they think that physical activity is a punishment, why are they going to do it any other time? Get them involved in sports activities. Take them to the pool this summer. City schools, um, do different type of physical ed activities during the school year. Well, some of those activities can be done at home, so you can have simple contest races and maybe if you have one of those scooters, the child can push the scooter down the street and have races with that. So, and then of course provide some sort of healthy diet for your child. Review, review, and our next section. So gross motor skills improve at middle childhood. Muscle coordination is much better, and this is a good time to start sports for children. Fine motor skills, these extremities also increase. The brain continues to expand and the neural net expands, so therefore the ability to use more of our body more efficiently expands. And just a chart, you don't have to like memorize the chart or anything. And I think I'm going to go to full screen at this point so you can see this better. Okay. So as you can just see the difference between the age and the development, you're not going to have to memorize this, of course, but you know, uh, just jumping and balancing, gripping, again, being able to judge and intercept balls. So if you're playing in sports, uh, being able to do dance or physical activities, soccer, baseball, football, everything is now coming together, especially by the time that they're age 12. Asthma, though, is an issue that starts to develop here. This is when a child may have some wheezing and coughing or shortness of breath. About 7 million US children have it, and more than 150 million children have it worldwide. There are some higher degrees of risk with racial and ethnic minorities. And things that can affect asthma your breathing. Any type of respiratory infection, especially something like bronchitis, allergic reactions. Some people have asthma attacks due to stress and also an increase of exercise. The next leading issue that we see for safety for school-age children are accidents. The more mobile they are, the more they're out there, the more likely that they're going to have an accident. We see a higher rate of boys than girls having accidents, and it does differ also by race. Even just as simple as, again, walking to school. A couple weeks ago, there was a shooting uh, outside of one of the schools. Luckily, nobody was injured, but just the threat. Our schools used to be a safe zone, and still call it a safe zone, but it isn't always very safe. Other accidents can cause issues. Sorry about the bell there. Last day of school here. Um, Accidents, motor vehicle accidents, car crashes kill 5 out of every 100,000 children between the ages of 5 and 9. Fires, burning, drowning, and gun-related deaths follow shortly behind. Uh, Simple things like wearing protective gear can help. So if you're out riding your bike or sledding, wearing a helmet to try to protect your brain so you don't end up with concussions. Safety on the web, that's one of the newer threats. Cyberspace, um, there are ways that parents can protect their children. The first one is making sure they know what their children are watching and doing on the internet. Don't feel like you're invading their space. They'll try to make you believe that, but you do want that to not affect you from checking in on what your child is doing online. It's not if your child is bad, but there are some people out there that are very unsavory that do try to harm our children. We are lucky to have the FBI center here for uh, watching over children's safety. And they go online onto different websites and basically pretend to be a child, and they hope to catch predators, and they do catch quite a few of them. Uh, but it's an issue. Parent supervision is a must if you're going to let your child on, especially if they have their own phones. And you'd be surprised at this age, you're thinking middle school, but most middle school children have their own phones or have access to a phone. Psychological disorders, we have childhood depression. Uh, Ever since COVID, especially, the amount of anxiety and depression has almost doubled in children. Medication can help, but that takes a while to regulate. When you're talking about medicating a child, um, you start with the lowest dose and go from there and look for side effects and how the child is tolerating that particular drug. There's, of course, a lot of research that still has to be done on the safety of antidepressants. We know when we get into especially the next age group of adolescents, young adults, that SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, can actually cause suicidal tendencies. So you do have to watch children. You can't just, here's a prescription, take this medicine and you'll be fine. No, so it does have to be something that is observed and watched, and it's just not a one and done type fix. So review again, motor skills, coordination, accidents, etc. Sample questions, and our last section with the the physical development of middle childhood. Auditory problems, 1 to 2% of our children have hearing impairment, and it may not be not like a total hearing loss, but just certain frequencies. Higher frequencies tend to be something we see more in males than females. Uh, it can really impair learning. Speech and hearing therapists can help. The sooner you get involved with help, the better off for the child. Speech problems, again, can accompany hearing impairments, and it can affect a wide range. It could be just slurring of words or just simple formation of words or even stuttering. So that is something we see that's very common in school age children. And then there are learning disabilities, being able to achieve and capacity to learn. Some children have difficulty, listening, speaking, writing, reading, math, dyslexia, dyscalculia, you know, uh, reversing of letters or dyscalculia, reversing of numbers. They may have difficulty spelling because they see the words backwards or some of the letters backwards. So they get confused between right and left. And it may be at this time that they're actually diagnosed. The subject matter prior to middle childhood, if you have a very intelligent child, they can memorize things very quickly and it can go undetected. Once you get into much more reading ability and the kind of the technical difficulty of being in middle childhood, you would notice it more. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADD, which is without the hyperactivity, marked by inattention. They are distracted very easily. They're very impulsive. Uh, they get frustrated easily. And they many times participate in inappropriate activities on a whim. It's not necessarily like they planned it out. They just felt like twirling around the room. It just happens. It occurs in 3 to 5% of school age children. Boys are more likely than girls to have ADHD. Some of the more common signs: difficulty finishing tasks, following instructions, or organizing their work. Sometimes something as simple as giving them a folder with different sections for all their papers. I have one young man who would come to class with this big binder of papers just stuck in from all year. And I said, okay, one of these periods, we're going to just go through and organize this. And he's like, oh, I can find everything. No, he couldn't find everything. And once we kind of got him on a pattern, I mean, it didn't improve him 100%, but it definitely gave him a fighting chance to get what he needed when he needed it for his classes. Fidgeting, squirming, inability to watch an entire television show or pay attention to a movie or a lecture, uh, frequently interruptions. Uh, uh, so he's talking to someone else is talking, and they butt in. Tendency to jump into a task without hearing or reading the directions. That might be all of us, right? Difficulty in waiting or remaining still. These are just some of the signs. If some of those sound like you might actually have undiagnosed ADHD. And when we get to older adults, we'll talk more about that and how you can kind of judge if you do or not. Just again, a visual to see the difference between a child with ADHD and one without. There's no simple test to identify ADHD, and we still don't know the causes. We believe it's connected to some neural delays, but there's no actual for sure. Ritalin, Dexedrine, Strattera. I mean, there are a whole bunch of new drugs. They all affect the person differently. It can help them focus, which is the main issue in education, but even in the real world. Let me pause this for 1 minute. Sorry about that break. I had a student come in and had a question. So, continuing on with ADHD, again, there are possible side effects. Some uh, people say that they feel extremely tired or they don't have any energy. They feel like their personality has changed. Sometimes just the drugs don't help, and it's actually preferred if they do uh, like therapy where they're taught how to control this and possibly meds with that, and may be able to eliminate the meds once they do the behavioral therapy. So there is a link, a small link between ADHD and diet. So diets with fatty acids and lots of food additives can contribute in a small way to ADHD. Review, sample question, sample short answer question. And there's that one. And we're also going to do 5.3 today because 5.2 is already filmed. So let me pull that up. Stop this first. Sorry about that. I couldn't decide if I was going to do them as separate or together. It's easier, I think, together. Okay, share my screen. Okay. So again, this would be the psychological of middle childhood. So we're talking each of the developmental theorists. So we're going to start with Erikson. Says the middle childhood is that industry versus inferiority. If they try new things uh, and are successful, it's a positive, uplifting things. If they try things and they fail and are criticized for it, for not doing their very best, or even though it may have been their best, this can cause this feeling of being inferior, and they may choose not to try new things or be hesitant about trying new things. From ages 6 to 12 is when we typically see this happen. They become a little more competent in meeting challenges if they're able to get through this stage. And we found that in research, children in this stage, if they are able to feel that sense that they can do things, even though they may make some mistakes along the way, that they feel that they can do things, is a high correlation between, future success in life, whether it's in school or job or just in personal attainments. Understanding who they are, they really get to see themselves who they are by this time in their life. They realize that there are some things they're good at and there are other things that they're not good at. And we have kind of a dual role of our personality. We have the academic side, what we're like as a student, but we also have that personal side, who we are as a person. Self-esteem, again, is an overall evaluation, positive or negative. It's a self-evaluation. And at this point in time, it still can affect a child's development. Always trying to give a positive approach to a child who may have not completed a task the way it should have been. Don't make it personal. One of my lines that always drives me crazy is when students say, "My bad." It's like, no, you're not bad. You made a mistake. That's it. We make mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. If you're bad, that doesn't give you anywhere to go, anywhere to grow. It just, you're labeling yourself that. So you don't want them to label themselves at this time period. Children will compare themselves to others at this time period. That peer interaction is very strong, and children will develop their own standards, what they find is acceptable for themselves and for others. So, children's self-esteem tends to increase in middle childhood. Children that do have low self-esteem may become in effect in this like negative loop of failure, and they develop what we call learned helplessness, where they don't think there's anything they can do to change what's going on. So they actually stop trying to do something. Parents should do their best if they see this happening to promote their child's self-esteem. When we talk about the different parenting style, authoritative is definitely the best here for children who have low self-esteem. The authoritative is the one that does set rules, but will sit down and explain to you why you're, being affected, why you're being punished, why you did something wrong, and not like the authoritarian, hey, it's my way or the highway. Um, the authoritative parenting style will work best for helping a child with low self-esteem. Race and self-esteem, many times minorities have a lower self-esteem due to society's prejudice and discrimination that they are experiencing. We do see a higher uh, uh, raise in self-esteem scores for Hispanics and African Americans by the end of middle childhood, and Asian children tend to show a decrease during this time period. It's important that as much as you have to try to protect your children, realize that the world has a whole bunch of stereotypes and they're exposed to that every single day. So you need to do your best as a parent to try to mitigate any of those circumstances. And, children of immigrant families have some challenges, lack of good health insurance, maybe lower paying jobs. Maybe English is not the main language at home. Higher rates of obesity. Many times it's because of uh, fast foods or foods that are cheap. If you only have so much money to work with, you're going to spend your money where you can fill up people's stomachs, not necessarily, go out and get the number one best vegetables in the world. Vegetables are expensive and they can get lots of rice and lots of noodles and lots of things with carbs in it for a heck of a lot less money. So it might be more of a luxury to have vegetables or fruits than it would be to have some of the, the other fillers, like we call it, just to fill the bellies. Lawrence Kohlberg is the man who actually did the development of moral reasoning, and he actually says that there are 6 stages, but they're broken into 3 main stages. So you should know the 3 main stages: pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional. And it's his uh, moral dilemmas, and there were 9 of them that you can find online if you're ever interested. And he would have the boys, and he tested boys, and only all boys, ages, I believe, 10 to 16. He tested the boys to answer these questions that go with these moral dilemmas, and then he categorized their answers to figure how they are thinking morally. Uh, After his research, Carol Gilligan came along and looked at his research and said, "Hey, Kohlberg, you didn't test any girls, and you're applying your theory to girls." And he's like, "Yeah, because they're the same, but they're not." So Carol Gilligan came along and did the research on girls, and she also tested boys too, to show that there are differences in how we morally reason. Not that one is better than the other, just different. That's all. So pre-conventional rewards, punishments, why people do things. Conventional is, you know, being good members of society. You don't want to break the law and have to go to jail. Post-conventional moral principles consider broader things like life is most important over money. So nobody should die because they can't afford their medicine. We should be able to provide that type of approach. So he said that people move through those stages, and some people never ever reach that highest stage. That actually that post-conventional stage can be relatively rare. So assessment of his theory, again, good account of moral judgment, but not necessarily good at predicting behavior. And it's more for Western culture, doesn't really look too much at the non-Western cultures. And he didn't really distinguish between conventional reasoning and any other type of reasoning. And he did research on males and did not adequately describe female moral dilemmas. Carol Gilligan, as I mentioned, suggested boys and girls morally reason differently. She found that boys morally reason looking at justice and fairness, where girls see morality as a responsibility and compassion toward individuals and a willingness to sacrifice for relationships. So women are more relational, males are more factual. And she said that there are 3 theories: that individual survivor, goodness of self-sacrifice, and morality of nonviolence. And not all research that's been done by other researchers actually even show there's any type of difference between males and females. And here are just the stages. Again, you're not going to have to memorize them, but I wanted to give you some examples. Review, review, review questions, and moving on. Friendship during this time period. Uh, Friends provide information about the world, other people, give emotional support, help kids handle stress. That also happens as adults too. Uh, Helps children control their emotions. If you're really freaking out and your friend is there, hey, calm down, it's okay, we'll get through it. Teach about communication, help intellectual growth, and can help children practice those relationship skills, which so many of our children are lacking because of all their screen time and less in-person time. But friends' uh, influence does not become greater than parents or other family members at this point in their life. So parents and family members are still the ones that are leading their children or directing children to make good choices. Damon proposes that that idea of friendship goes through three stages. The first one, between 4 and 7, they look for kids who are like themselves. They look for friends who will share toys and do things, that they like to do. And at this age, children don't take any account into the person's personal traits. Oh, they do this. Oh, they do that. Oh, I have to like them. No. Based on trust and friendship, 8 to 10, they start to look at other people's personal qualities to decide, oh, I don't like them. They don't follow through, or they're kind of lazy. They may choose, okay, I don't really want to be friends with them. I'll be their acquaintance, but I don't necessarily want to be their friend. Friends viewed in terms of reward that we get back from being friends with them. And that's not a monetary award or anything like that, but it's just you feel good with them. You have a good time. You enjoy each other's company. You share ideas and hopes and dreams and what you want to be when you grow up. So there's also this building of trust. You trust that other person, that other individual to keep your secrets or be accepting of who you are. The third stage is now 11 to 15. So now we're getting into adolescence. And those friendships are based on intimacy and loyalty. Again, intimacy in psychology does not mean sex, it means relationship. So, our relationship and our loyalty to that other person, friendships, mutual disclosure. With a friend, you have to feel comfortable that they're going to keep your secrets and talk to you and give you good advice and know that you're going to be there to listen to them and give them good advice. It has to be mutual. So, what makes a kid popular? Because this is when we start seeing this in the school system. High status children tend to have greater access to things. So people want to be in relationship with high status children because they have money, they have games, they have toys, they have books, they have information. Low status children tend to follow the lead of higher status children because they want to be like higher status children. Higher status children form relationships and friendships with other high status children. Low status children likely to befriend children of lower status because they're going to be the ones that they're around more. And high status children form cliques. Cliques are groups of like 2 to 8 people with more children than lower status children to play with. And low status children will play with younger children and less popular children because they feel accepted. And in many ways, it's a boost to their positive esteem because now they're kind of the person in charge because they're the oldest of the bunch. Popularity is a reflection of your status. So, what makes a child popular? Children who are helpful, not only to adults, but to each other, cooperative, good sense of humor at any age, right? Can be a really main reason for popularity. good emotional understanding. They adapt well to social situations. They're not like getting in fights and arguing and causing diversion in situations. And we know children can have the ability to learn to solve problems and conflicts by uh, being in friendships and relationships. And sometimes they're able to solve those problems, and sometimes it's not, but it's a learning process to look for relative clues and then learn about those cues and evaluate them and see what's the appropriate response. And sometimes, again, it's a response that means that a relationship can be saved, and sometimes it means that the end uh, of that relationship has to happen. And again, you don't have to memorize the chart. It's for my visual learners. When we talk about social competence, uh, the steps that allow adults to intervene and help a child, again, a parent doesn't want to take over every situation. You don't want to become a crutch for your child. Your child needs to know you're there to support them. And that's it. Help support them, help them to learn, teach them social skills. And there are some really good programs out there on the market that you have free access to on the internet. So encourage them to be interactive with others. Teach them how to listen. Make children aware of emotions and moods and nonverbal communication, which they many times are lacking when they're on social media, because there's a big difference when you send somebody a text. You don't see their facial expression. You don't see their body posture. You don't, you may have sent something as a joke or kidding around, and you put a little smiley face, and that means absolutely nothing when that person reads that and they're like, and you don't know they're having that reaction, and that can build and develop and cause that division eventually of a friendship. So helping children to understand that. Teach them how to make conversation. Talk to your children. Put the phones down in the house and talk to each other. Uh, I have one student who, always tells me their lunch table. There's 8 of them sitting at the lunch table, and they all have their phones out because they're allowed to use their phones at the lunch table. And instead of talking to each other, they're texting each other, but they could be talking to each other, but they're not. The, this device has become to many a crutch on how to communicate, that they don't know how to communicate any other way. Bullying, big topic always. Uh, Children, at least, 160,000, and I'm betting it's more than that by now, stay home because they're afraid of being bullied. Many are bullied on the internet, which can, be more public. Children have committed suicide over being bullied, whether physically at school or physically uh, watching something on the internet or somebody posting something on the internet. Um, Bullies tend to be loners, and they pick on people who are also loners, because children who are bullies tend to have low self-esteem. And by picking on someone else, they feel better. It gives them a boost. They're not going to pick on the football star. They're not going to pick on the student council president. No, they're going to pick on kids that they know that they have control over. So loners, kids who cry easily, kids who don't have the social skills. The sad truth is 90% of our middle school students have reported being bullied at some time in school. 90%. I want you to think back in your school days. Are you part of that 90% that somewhere you were bullied? Or maybe you were the bully? Something to think about. So, how about these people that are bullies? So, we're talking about 15% of students are bullies. Half come from abusive homes. Again, it gives them some control where they have no control at home. They tend to prefer violent TV. That doesn't mean violence causes them to be a bully. They tend to misbehave more. When they're caught, they lie or they show very little remorse. And they are likely to grow up to break laws as adults. It worked when they were younger. Might as well continue, right? Helping students to intervene when they see someone being bullied. Again, taking that step out, getting help if they don't feel they can deal with the situation, contacting someone, contacting an adult, contacting the police, contacting a parent can help intervene. When we talk about this age, friendships are still what we call sex segregated. Boys tend to hang out with boys and girls tend to hang out with girls. And we see this nearly on all societies around the world. And it's still at this age where friendship is based on what we're comfortable with. Boys tend to have larger networks of friends and tend to have a hierarchy. So someone becomes the leader, where girls, we see that more as a shared role. Girls focus on what we would call best friends. They tend to have one or two best friends. They may have other groups of people that they're close to, but they're usually one or two best friends that they feel comfortable with. They help to solve issues going on in their life. Girls are confrontational with boys or girls who are not their friends, and girls' language is less confrontational than boys. Um, when we talk about, again, how girls and boys different, uh, girls many times will focus on um, the back way of bullying or attacking a person. Like they're not necessarily physically going to attack them, but they may psychologically attack them. So they make a fake website or they spread rumors about them, things like that. So, children can make friends, of course, with children of anybody in their social network. So, it is greatly encouraged to reduce prejudice and discrimination, to increase contact between the ethnic groups. And in schools, we call it jigsaw, where we place people in different groups. So it's different economics, it could be different environment, it could be different nationalities, etc., just to have people in a positive exposure of other people. And again, review and review, sample question, and our last section. This is a time where parents give a little more freedom to children and they're ready for it because they want to become young adults. And this is a time where they don't have complete control over everything, but things can be negotiated, like, can I stay out till 10 in the summer? Okay, if you do this first. Okay, I'll do that. So, children tend to spend less time with parents as we get towards the end of this cycle. And um, again, don't forget, parents are still the major influence at this time period. That will change slightly when we get into adolescence. Siblings can provide great support and companionship and sense of security. There can be sibling rivalry, usually most intense when they're close in age and of the same gender. So the oldest child and the next child a year apart, both males, both females, that's where you can see some issues. And then, of course, culture can play a difference. Only children are not spoiled and self-centered. They tend to have higher self-esteem, stronger motivation, and tend to be more parent-like leaders. Um, and I was an only child, so I'm going to back that one up by, yeah, that one. We weren't spoiled, it's like this. There are advantages and disadvantages to being an only child. You miss out on that companionship, the support, and all the security of having a sibling, like for the rest of your life. But you are treated more like an adult. So you tend to have more opportunities, and your parents give you a little more freedom a lot earlier than you would. Single parent families, 25% of US children under 18 live with a single parent. Numbers are higher for minorities. Many homes are multi-generational where grandma, maybe even great grandma, grandpa are living in the same house together. Many times those grandparents have the role of babysitting while the parent goes to work. Blended families or, with families divorcing, meeting someone else. Now you have one child here, one child from the other relationship, helping children to get together and feel comfortable again. Um, it can be a very easy adjustment or it can be hell if not handled correctly. It gives some stability and can help financial status because now you have two pays coming into the family, but not all children adjust well, especially if they feel threatened or feel like this person is coming in to take over to be their dad or to be their new mom. And they don't like that interaction. So the smoother that transition, the greater chance you have of making it work. Families with gay and lesbian parents, growing number of children have two mothers or two fathers, and there's no difference that exists, in research that children being raised in a heterosexual family versus those in a gay or lesbian family makes any difference at all. Loving parents are what make a difference. If you have loving parents who care about you and do what they can to help you to grow and be young adults, that's what matters. Same with race. African American families tend to have a strong sense of family. Hispanic families also very religious. Asian fathers tend to be more powerful, more authoritarian. It has to be this way. It should be this way. Very common in that culture. And, what happens, excuse me, when you have parents who work? What happens to children? Many children go home and take care of themselves. until their parents return from work. They may call the parent when they get home, or they just go home. They have a set, they have to do their homework, and then they're allowed to maybe watch TV. They might even be fixing dinner. I had a young girl, she was 12, and her job was to go home after school and start dinner and take care of her younger sister, who was 3, until her parents got home. And they didn't necessarily come home right away. Sometimes they went out to dinner or they went down to the bar, and she would be there to take care of her younger sister, should make sure that her younger sister had a bath and had her clothes clean and ready to go for going to her daycare the next day. And she would even put the child to bed and then get her stuff done and then go to bed. So sometimes a lot of responsibility is put on children when parents defer that responsibility. Divorce, only half of American children have intact homes. Children sometimes will blame themselves. They shouldn't. Most children do live with the mother, but that has changed. We do see some being placed with father. Uh, Children and parents may show anxiety, depression, sleep disturbance, phobias up to 2 years after the divorce. And if you're seeing that pattern, please get your child help. Many children return to their normal, normal quote unquote state before the divorce, but it takes a little bit of time. It's not immediate, and you shouldn't expect it to be. Twice as many children from divorced and parents, divorced parents require some sort of counseling. Many schools lead programs in counseling for children coming from divorce, and it can lead to a decline in standard of living because money is now not as readily available. Depending on how children are uh, placed. I had a student who was with mom Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and dad Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every week. So the child needed 2 sets of books, 2 book bags, 2 of everything. And they literally moved like their life, 4 days here, 3 days here, one like Christmas vacation, they'd be with mom, summer vacation, they'd be with dad. It was so difficult for that child. Otherwise, sometimes it's just half a year and half a year, like they're with the one parent half a year, the other parent. Yeah, it depends on how they decide to split the custody. Okay. Poverty can have an issue. There are unsafe neighborhoods, high rates of crime, inferior schools. I'll never forget when I had one of my freshmen come in a few years ago and say, "Hey, Mr. Blasky, do you want to see my bullet wound?" I'm like, "Excuse me, your bullet wound?" He's like, "Yeah, I was shot this summer." You were shot? Yeah, I was sitting in my backyard and my sister was out there. I was watching her and I saw this car driving by and I got a little concerned. So I went to grab my sister and they shot me. And he got shot in the arm and the bullet literally went right through his arm. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, this young man was just watching his little sister in their backyard. So it can happen. It can happen anywhere. Violence is an issue. And we do have problems in schools. Some schools have tons of money and other schools maybe not so much because of the tax uh, base, but our kids should be an important commodity. orphanages, group homes, foster care, etc. Group homes are for children whose parents can no longer care for them adequately, and that has increased about 50%. 70% of children in group homes are victims of some sort of abuse or neglect. One-fourth will be in a group home their entire childhood. And group care is neither good or bad. It's very much each individual location and the parents of that situation. And children tend to develop a healthy bond with that person in the home. That can make all the difference. Review, review, sample question, sample short answer question. So that's the end of lectures for 5.1 and 5.3. 5.2 is already filmed on Blackboard. And if you have any questions, just send me a message and I will be glad to respond. And have a good day.